Abimbola's mop bucket crashed across the marble floor, the exact second the ruthless CEO shouted, "Fire everyone on this level!" Water spread like panic through the grand lobby. Managers lowered their heads. Security guards froze. No one dared breathe when Tunde Adebayo, the man who made an entire city tremble, turned toward the trembling janitor girl in a faded uniform. "You entered my private floor," he said coldly. Why Abimbola's lips shook, but she still answered, "Because an old man collapsed, and no one else helped him." Silence hit harder than thunder, because the old man she saved was the one secret Tunde had hidden from the world. What would you do if kindness cost you your job, but exposed a powerful man's deepest secret? Tell me your country and local time below. And if you love emotional, powerful stories like this, subscribe and stay with us for the next part. The entire headquarters of Adebayo Holdings still whispered about the janitor girl by sunrise. Workers spoke in corners. Receptionists lowered their voices when supervisors passed. Security guards replayed the scene in their minds again and again, the mop bucket crashing. The CEO's rage, the fearless answer from a girl whose monthly salary was smaller than the shoes of the men who mocked her. No one understood why Abimbola had not been fired immediately. At 7:30 in the morning, she stepped off a crowded bus with sore feet and swollen eyes. Lagos was already awake, horns blaring, traders shouting engines, coughing black smoke into the humid air. She clutched a small cloth bag against her chest and hurried through the side gate reserved for service staff. Her uniform had been washed so many times that the blue fabric looked grey, but it was clean. That mattered to her. Abimbola entered the basement locker room and changed in silence. Two other cleaners stared at her with open curiosity. "You are still here?" one asked. "I think so," Abimbola replied. "You spoke to him directly." "I know. They say he once dismissed 30 people before breakfast." Abimbola tied her hair back. "Then I should work fast." The women exchanged glances. One almost laughed, then stopped when she saw the exhaustion in Abimbola's face. She had not slept. The truth was waiting at home. Her mother, Mama Sade, had coughed blood into a towel during the night and pretended it was nothing. Her younger brother, Kunle, had quietly offered to leave school again to find work. Abimbola had smiled at both of them and lied that everything would be fine. She lied often now, not because she enjoyed it, because hope sometimes needed help surviving. Upstairs on the top executive floor, Tunde Adebayo stood before a wall of glass overlooking the city. The skyline bowed beneath morning haze. Towers, traffic, wealth, struggle, everything moved below him, yet his expression remained hard as carved stone. His assistant, Miriam Okiki, entered carefully. "So the board documents for noon. Later. The Singapore investors are waiting for confirmation." "Later." She hesitated, and the cleaner girl Tunde turned slowly. That single movement made experienced executives nervous. What about her? "She has resumed duty." "Who authorized that?" "You did not dismiss her." Miriam held his stare only long enough to survive it. Then she placed a thin folder on his desk. Background file. As requested. When she left, Tunde opened it. Abimbola Sadiq, age 24. Position night janitorial contractor. Residence Makoko district outskirts. Emergency contact Sade Sadiq. Dependent listed Kunle Sadiq. No father, no assets, no disciplinary record. 3 years of perfect attendance. Tunde's jaw tightened. Perfect attendance from someone living in poverty meant one thing: desperation, or discipline. He disliked both, because both reminded him of himself. He closed the file, but not before noticing one note added by Human Resources. Often stays after shift to help older workers without pay. He almost tore the page. Kindness had cost him too much in life. Years ago, when he was younger and foolish enough to trust people, He had handed authority to those who smiled sweetest. His former fiancée had leaked confidential bids. His own cousin had sold internal data. Employees he promoted had stolen from pension funds while praising his leadership in public. He learned the lesson brutally. Mercy invites parasites. Trust creates knives. So he became what people feared, and fear, unlike love, usually obeyed. Still, he remembered Abimbola's eyes, not pleading, accusing. By 10 o'clock, Abimbola was assigned to clean a conference wing no janitor normally touched. A trap. She knew it instantly. The carpets were imported cream wool. The tables were glass. The art on the walls cost more than her neighborhood. One stain here could destroy her. She breathed once and began carefully. As she worked, 2 managers entered mid-conversation and stopped when they saw her. "This one asked?" "Yes," said the other. "The hero." They laughed. Abimbola kept wiping the table. "You people are brave when cameras are near," the first man said. "Tell us, did you faint after speaking to the boss? No. Did he thank you? No. Did he beg you to save him too?" She looked up calmly. "No. But he should thank whoever taught you to wear a tie. Without it, no one would mistake you for important." The second manager choked on his own laughter. The first man's face darkened. "You insolent girl." He stepped closer. At that moment, the conference doors opened. Tunde Adebayo entered with 3 executives behind him. The room froze. The manager immediately straightened. "Sir, we were only checking standards." Tunde glanced at the polished table, the spotless floor, the untouched supply cart, then at Abimbola, then back at the manager, checking standards by interrupting work. "No, sir, I good. Then you may demonstrate efficiency." He pointed to the mop. "Clean the corridor outside." The manager blinked. "Sir, now." No one moved. Tunde's voice dropped. That was not a discussion. Humiliation spread across the man's face like fire. He grabbed the mop handle while the others lowered their eyes. Abimbola stared in shock. Tunde walked past her without another word. But just before reaching the door, he paused. "Report to executive pantry at 6 this evening," he said. She stiffened. "Why?" His tone turned icy again. "If I wanted questions, I would have hired opinions." Then he left. The managers followed in silence, one carrying the mop of his own disgrace. Abimbola's pulse raced. Why did he want her there? Punishment interrogation. Another trap. By evening, she almost did not go. But then Mama Sade called. "The pharmacist says they cannot extend credit again." Abimbola closed her eyes. How much? When she heard the amount, her stomach sank. It was more than she had. Much more. So at 5:58, she stood outside the executive pantry door with trembling hands. Inside the room was elegant and quiet. Tea service, fresh fruit, city view. And seated alone at the long table was an elderly man with kind, tired eyes. The same old man who had collapsed on the forbidden floor. He smiled when he saw her. "You came." Abimbola frowned. "Sir." Before he could answer, Tunde stepped from the shadows near the window. "He is my father," he said. Her breath caught. The city believed Tunde's father was dead. Everyone believed it. The old man lowered his gaze sadly. Tunde's voice was sharp enough to cut glass. "Now tell me, Abimbola, who else have you told?" Abimbola's fingers tightened around the edge of her cleaning cart so hard her knuckles hurt. The old man sitting at the polished table did not look like a ghost. He looked tired, human, fragile. His silver beard was neatly trimmed, but his skin carried the thin, faded look of someone recovering from an illness the world was never meant to know about. A teacup trembled lightly in his hand. Yet what froze Abimbola was not his face. It was the way Tunde Adebayo stood beside him, rigid, protective, and dangerous all at once. This was no ordinary secret. This was the kind that could destroy empires. I told no one, Abimbola said carefully. Tunde's eyes narrowed. Why should I believe that? Because if I wanted money, I would not still be cleaning your floors. The answer landed harder than defiance. For a moment, Tunde said nothing. The old man, Chief Adebayo, gave a quiet, almost weary smile. She speaks truth more easily than the people who wear suits in this building. Tunde did not look at him. That has not always ended well for us. Abimbola glanced between them. There was history in the room and pain and something even heavier than fear. Chief Adebayo leaned back slowly. Sit down, my child. Abimbola immediately shook her head. No, sir, I'm fine. That was not a command from a master, the old man said softly. It was a request from the man whose life you saved. She hesitated, then sat on the far edge of the chair as if the furniture itself might accuse her of trespassing. Tunde remained standing. He always seemed to prefer positions from which he could judge others. Chief Adebayo studied her face with a strange gentleness. You came to the private floor because you heard me fall. Yes, sir. You were told that level was restricted, yes, sir. And still you came. Abimbola lowered her eyes. I heard someone gasping. I thought if I waited for permission, the person might die. Chief Adebayo nodded slowly, as though her answer confirmed something old inside him. Tunde crossed his arms. Bravery and foolishness are close relatives. Abimbola looked up. Maybe, but indifference kills faster. Silence struck the room. The old man hid a smile behind his cup. Tunde's expression did not change, but something cold flickered in his eyes. Not anger this time, but recognition. She had touched a nerve, and both of them knew it. Chief Adebayo placed the cup down. The public believes I am dead because that version of the story protects the company. Protects the company, Abimbola repeated quietly. Tunde's voice hardened. Do not mistake explanation for trust. She met his stare. Then don't mistake silence for loyalty. Again that invisible spark, the kind that came right before a fire. But Chief Adebayo interrupted before either could push further. The company has enemies, child. Some outside. Some. He paused, eyes dimming. Some closer than blood should ever allow. That sentence stayed in the air after he spoke it. Abimbola did not ask questions. Poor people learned early that powerful families buried their ugliness beneath polished names and locked doors. She had seen enough already to know that this building shined brightest, where rot ran deepest. Tunde walked to the head of the table and placed a small envelope before her. Her body stiffened. What is this? Your reward, he said. I didn't ask for one. No, which is why I'm offering. Abimbola did not touch it. For saving him, for keeping your mouth shut. Chief Adebayo's expression changed. Tunde. But Tunde ignored him. He wanted to see what kind of woman she was. A beggar in cleaner clothes. A moralist for sale. Another sweet-faced opportunist who would speak of dignity with one breath and count money with the next. Abimbola stared at the envelope as if it insulted her personally. Then she pushed it back across the table. I need money, she said, desperately, but not like that. For the first time that evening, Tunde truly looked at her. Not at her uniform, not at her poverty. At her. And what does that mean? It means, she said, voice shaking now, but refusing to fall apart. I will take a salary. I will take overtime. I will take honest help if it is given honestly. But I won't take hush money like a thief. Chief Adebayo let out a long breath as though he had just heard something he had not heard in years. truth without performance. Tunde's face became unreadable. "Leave," he said. Abimbola rose instantly, pulse pounding. Had she gone too far? At the door, Chief Adebayo called after her. "Your name. Say it again." She turned. Abimbola. The old man repeated it with care, like he intended to remember it. Then she walked out. The hallway outside felt colder than before. She exhaled only when the elevator doors closed. Inside the executive pantry, Chief Adebayo waited until the doors sealed shut before speaking. "She reminds me of your mother." Tunde's jaw tightened. "You say that every time someone refuses money." "No," the old man replied. "Only when they refuse it for the right reason." Tunde turned toward the darkening skyline. "Right reasons do not protect people. They protect the soul." Tunde gave a short, humorless laugh. "Souls do not win boardroom wars." Chief Adebayo looked at his son for a long moment. "And yet here you are." Rich feared obeyed. "Tell me, Tunde, has any of it given you peace?" Tunde said nothing, because the answer lived in silence. Meanwhile, on the service elevator down, Abimbola fought the shaking in her hands. She should have taken the money. Mama Sade needed medicine. Rent was late. Kunla's school had sent another notice that morning. Pride could not boil rice. Dignity could not buy tablets or stop coughing blood in the night. But something in her refused. Not because she was noble, because she was tired. Tired of being the kind of poor that powerful people thought they could purchase in secret and shame in public. When she reached the basement, she found Baba Chaik, the elderly cleaner she often helped, waiting beside the laundry carts. "You met them," he said quietly. She blinked. "How do you know?" He shrugged. "This building has ears, and old men talk to old men." Abimbola forced a smile. "Then the building knows I'm still not fired." Baba Chike chuckled, then studied her face. "But something is wrong." She sat beside him on an overturned bucket and rubbed her forehead. "I could have taken money tonight, enough to help my mother, maybe more. And you did not, no. Do you regret it?" Abimbola thought of Mama Sade's cough, of Kunle pretending he was not hungry so she could eat, of the cracked ceiling above the bed they all shared. Her throat tightened. "Yes," she whispered. "And no." Baba Chike nodded, as if that answer made perfect sense. "The most expensive choices are often the clean ones." She laughed bitterly. "That sounds like something wise people say after they've eaten." The old man smiled sadly. "True." Her phone vibrated. She checked it. A text from Kunle. "School says I cannot sit exams unless fees are paid by Friday. Don't worry. I'll sort myself." Her stomach dropped. Kunle only wrote, "I'll sort myself," when he was lying. "What is it?" Baba Chike asked. "My brother." The old man's face tightened. "Good boy, the best one I know. Then trouble will find him early. The world enjoys testing good boys." Abimbola stood abruptly. "I have to go." She rushed home through noisy streets, through the smell of diesel, rain-damp trash, and frying peppers from roadside cellars. The bus ride felt endless. By the time she entered their narrow room, Mama Sade was asleep, one hand pressed to her chest. But Kunle was not there. His school bag was gone too. Abimbola's pulse spiked. She called him once. No answer. Twice. Nothing. Then a message arrived from an unknown number. "If you want your brother's scholarship problem solved, come alone tomorrow after work. We know where you clean." Below it was an address, and beneath the address, the faint scanned image of a company letterhead from Adebayo Holdings Welfare Division. Abimbola stared at the screen until dread turned into certainty. This was no random trap. Something dirty was moving inside the company. Something connected to desperate students. Something wearing the face of legitimacy. And for the first time since entering that building, she understood that the danger around Tunde Adebayo was bigger than his temper, bigger than his secrets, maybe even bigger than the hidden old man on the executive floor. Somebody inside the company was feeding on the weak, and somehow her brother had just been pulled into its mouth. Abimbola did not sleep that night. She sat on the edge of the narrow mattress, staring at the unknown number on her phone, until the sky outside their rusted window turned from black to dirty grey. Beside her, Mama Sade coughed in her sleep, her breathing rough and uneven. Every few minutes, Abimbola reached out to touch the older woman's shoulder, as if making sure she was still there. On the floor near the wall, Kunle's blanket lay folded, untouched. That empty space hurt more than any shout. At 5 a.m, Kunle finally returned. He slipped through the door quietly, hoping to avoid questions. But the moment Abimbola saw his face, she knew. His left cheek was swollen. His school shirt was wrinkled. His eyes carried the frightened shame of a boy who had tried to behave like a man and discovered how cruel men could be. She rose so fast the stool behind her fell. "Where were you?" Kunle looked down. "I was handling it." "With who?" "It's not serious." Abimbola grabbed his chin gently but firmly and turned his face toward the weak morning light. There was a bruise near his jaw. Her voice dropped to a whisper more dangerous than screaming. "Who touched you?" Kunle swallowed. He had always been the gentle one, the soft-hearted boy who apologized when other people stepped on his feet. He hated conflict, hated disappointing her even more. "I went to ask about the scholarship program," he said. "One of the school officers said a company foundation was helping boys from poor families. He gave me a number. They said I could get fast approval if I signed some papers. What papers? I didn't understand all of it." Her stomach turned cold. "Kunle." He looked at her, terrified now. "I thought I was helping. I thought if I got the money, you wouldn't have to keep working nights, and Mama could get better treatment. I just wanted to help." Abimbola closed her eyes for 1 second because her anger was not truly for him. It was for the people who hunted boys like him. She exhaled slowly. And then he hesitated. "There were men there," he said. "Not office people, real street men. They said I had already accepted an advance and now I owed them. I told them I never took money." They laughed. One of them said the debt could be repaid with work. What kind of work? Kunle's silence answered before his mouth did. Her blood ran hot. In Lagos, poor boys disappeared into work every day. Courier jobs that became drug runs, temporary labor that became extortion. Driver contracts that became criminal errands for men in clean suits. Predators rarely looked like monsters. Sometimes they looked like sponsors. Abimbola sat down beside him and gripped both his shoulders. "Listen to me carefully. You will never go near those people again. If anyone calls you, tell me. If anyone follows you, you tell me. If they offer money, food, transport, anything, you tell me." Kunle nodded, eyes wet. "I'm sorry." "No." Her voice softened immediately. "No, my brother. This is not your shame. Do you hear me? It belongs to the people who saw your hunger and tried to use it." Mama Sade stirred awake, coughing weakly. The old woman looked between them, instantly reading the fear in the room. "What happened?" Abimbola forced calm into her face. "Nothing you need to worry about." Mama Sade gave her a long look. "That means it is serious." But Abimbola did not answer. She moved to help her sit up, fetched water, adjusted her worn wrapper, and tucked the blanket closer around her legs. She did all of it with tender hands and a mind already racing ahead. The message, the false scholarship, the company letterhead. It all pointed back to Adebayo Holdings. By 8 o'clock, Abimbola was back at the headquarters. She had made a choice during the bus ride. She would not go to the address from the message yet. She would first learn who inside the company had access to the welfare division documents. The building looked as it always did, gleaming, expensive, arrogant. Glass walls, polished steel, Security gates more sophisticated than the clinic where Mama Sade had nearly died waiting for oxygen. Wealth had a smell in that place. Cold air conditioning, imported floor polish, and coffee too fine for the workers who scrubbed its cups. Abimbola pushed her cleaning cart through the service corridor, head lowered the way poor people learned to lower it in rich spaces. But her mind was sharp. At the staff pantry, 2 clerks from administration were gossiping over tea. She slowed near the sink, pretending to wipe the counter. "I'm telling you, one said those welfare files have been moving through operations for months." "Since when does operations handle student aid?" the other asked. "Since Mr. Jide Balogun decided efficiency matters more than procedure." Abimbola kept her face blank, though her pulse jumped. Jide Balogun. The same man from the outline of suspicion, now stepping into clearer shape. Head of operations. Trusted. Smooth-speaking. Always dressed like he had ironed ambition directly into his suits. The second clerk lowered her voice. "I heard one boy's family came crying last week, said the company was using school debt to force labor contracts. That woman nearly got thrown out by security." Of course she did. Poor people become liars the moment they embarrass important people. They laughed uneasily, not because it was funny, but because cowardice often disguised itself as humor. Abimbola turned away before they noticed the fury in her eyes. By noon, rumors swept the building again. The CEO was in a mood. 3 managers had been publicly humiliated before lunch. A contractor had lost a major deal. An investor had been forced to wait in the boardroom because Tunde Adebayo had abruptly changed the meeting schedule. People feared him more on quiet days than loud ones. Quiet meant he was thinking. And when powerful men thought in silence, ordinary people paid later. On the 20th floor, Tunde stood in his office rereading a document he had already read 3 times. It was not board material. It was not investor correspondence. It was Abimbola's employee file. He should have destroyed it after last night. Instead, he had marked details with a pen. Mother ill, brother in school, no complaints filed, no disciplinary history. He hated that he remembered the way her face changed when he offered money. Not greed, pain. That disturbed him. Most people looked insulted when tested. She had looked tempted, and then offended by herself for being tempted. That kind of honesty was dangerous because it made lies around it easier to smell. A knock came. "Enter." Miriam Okiki stepped inside, holding a payment summary. "Sir, the anonymous transfer for Sade Sadiq's hospital bill has been processed." He did not turn from the window. "Good. She will assume it came from a charity office." "Good." Miriam hesitated. "You are helping the janitor's family. I am removing a distraction." She said nothing. Everyone in the building knew better than to challenge Tunde directly, but Miriam had worked with him long enough to recognize the difference between cruelty and self-deception. Before she could leave, another message came through her tablet. She glanced down. "Sir, Operations is requesting approval to expand the student welfare outreach program." Tunde's expression hardened. "Who signed it, Jide Balogun? Put it on hold." "Reason." At last he turned. "Because I said so." Meanwhile, Abimbola had moved her cart into the old records corridor behind human resources, where fewer cameras covered the storage cabinets. The corridor smelled of paper dust and stale air. Metal shelves lined the walls stacked with archived files, procurement reports, and shredded box remnants waiting for disposal. She was not supposed to be there. That was precisely why she entered. She checked both ends of the hallway. Empty. Then she found the cabinet labeled Welfare/Education Outreach/External Disbursements. Locked. She swallowed, looking for something. The voice behind her nearly stopped her heart. Abimbola turned. Tunde Adebayo stood at the far end of the corridor, one hand in his pocket, the other holding a folder. His face was unreadable. For a second neither spoke. Then Abimbola lifted her chin. Yes? Tunde studied her cart, the locked cabinet, her tense shoulders. At least you are consistent, he said. You keep wandering into places forbidden to you. Her answer came quickly. Maybe forbidden places are where all the truth is kept. That might have earned another employee dismissal. Instead, something strange happened. Tunde took 2 steps forward, then 3 more. He stopped beside the cabinet, glanced once at the label, and looked back at her. What truth are you chasing? Abimbola did not plan to tell him. But then she thought of Kunle's bruised face, Mama Sade's coughing blood, boys trapped by fake kindness, women turned away at security desks because their pain embarrassed wealth. So she told him. Not everything, just enough. The scholarship program connected to your company is trapping poor students, she said. My brother was targeted. He was lured with debt papers and threatened by men using company documents. The corridor seemed to shrink around them. Tunde's eyes darkened, not with disbelief but with something colder. Rage. Names. I don't have all of them yet. Then why come here alone? Because people like us learn early that official complaint is just another door rich men close. He stared at her so long she wondered if she had finally crossed the line beyond repair. Then, without warning, he removed a ring of keys from his pocket, selected one, unlocked the cabinet. The metal latch clicked open. Abimbola looked at him in shock. Why are you helping me? His jaw tightened. Do not misunderstand this. I am not helping you. He pulled the drawer open and scanned the files inside. I am helping myself. He slid one folder out, opened it, and his expression changed immediately. Abimbola saw it happen in real time. The stillness, the focus, the fury narrowing into certainty. What is it? She asked. Tunde turned the file toward her. Inside were payment approvals, student beneficiary lists, forged signatures, and at the bottom of multiple authorizations, Jide Balogun. Above his name sat the official seal of Adebayo Holdings. Below it were several handwritten notes about labor conversion candidates. Abimbola went cold. Tunde did not move for several seconds. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet enough to terrify. He used my company to hunt children. Abimbola looked up at him. For the first time since she had met him, the Ruthless CEO did not look powerful. He looked betrayed. And in that betrayal, something human cracked open. For several seconds neither of them spoke. The old records corridor seemed to hold its breath with them. Dust floated through the narrow strip of fluorescent light above, drifting lazily over the open cabinet, as if the building itself were too stunned to move faster. Tunde Adebayo kept staring at the file. The paper in his hand looked ordinary. A cream folder, internal seals, payment schedules, signatures. But Abimbola could see from his face that what he held was more than evidence. It was betrayal in printed form. He used my company to hunt children, Tunde said again, quieter now, as if the sentence had to pass through disbelief before it could become real. Abimbola watched his fingers tighten around the folder. My brother is not the first. I know. His answer came too fast. That startled her. Tunde shut the file and turned away, pacing once down the narrow corridor before stopping again. When powerful men lost control, they either shouted or went silent. Tunde did neither. He became sharper, more dangerous. How long has this been happening? He asked. I don't know. Who contacted Kunle? An unknown number. A school officer gave it to him. Do you still have the message? Yes. Send it to me. Abimbola did not move. Tunde turned back, eyes cold. Now. She should have obeyed immediately. Instead, she asked the question that had been burning in her chest since the moment she saw Jide's signature. If you trusted him so much, why should I trust you? The words hit hard, not because they were disrespectful, because they were fair. For a brief second, something flashed across Tunde's face. Anger, yes, but behind it, something older and uglier. Shame. I did not ask for your trust, he said. But you expect it. No, I expect cooperation. Abimbola folded her arms. That sounds like a rich man's version of the same thing. His jaw flexed. She should stop, she knew that. But Kunla's swollen cheek kept appearing in her mind. Mama Saad coughing into cloth. Boys turned into prey by men who wore company badges and expensive watches. Her fear was still there, but anger had become larger. You built a company people are terrified of, she said. So terrified that poor families would rather disappear than come to you for help. If criminals used your name to trap children, that is partly their sin and partly the kind of fear you created. The corridor went deathly still. Any other employee would have been finished. Abimbola knew it. Tunde knew it too. Yet instead of exploding, he looked at her with a strange, grim stillness, as if she had forced him to stare at his own reflection, and he hated what he saw. Finally he said, "Send me the message." This time she did. He checked his phone, saved the number, then slipped it into his pocket. From now on, he said, you will tell me anything connected to this program. And what do I get in return? His eyes narrowed slightly. She lifted her chin. Protection for my brother. Real protection. Not promises. Tunde studied her for a long moment. Done. You say that easily. I do everything easily until someone gives me reason not to. Abimbola almost laughed, but there was nothing funny in the room. Tunde pulled 3 more files from the cabinet and spread them over a metal shelf. Payment lists, outreach memos, school liaison reports, signatures from minor officers' procurement stamps, transport authorizations, all threaded through operations, all pointing back to Jide Balogun. Abimbola stepped closer despite herself. Who is he to you? She asked. Tunde's mouth hardened. A man I raised higher than he deserved. That answer carried weight, not merely professional weight. Personal. He picked up one sheet and scanned it again with increasing disgust. When the company nearly collapsed 5 years ago, most of the executives ran. Investors panicked. Staff leaked information. Board members protected themselves. Jide stayed. Out of loyalty, Tunde gave a short laugh with no warmth in it. That is what I believed. He closed the file more carefully this time, which somehow felt more violent than slamming it shut. He worked late, took difficult assignments, cleaned messes nobody else wanted near them. He knew how to speak to bankers, regulators, unions. He anticipated trouble before it exploded. When everyone else was looking for escape routes, he stood beside me. Abimbola listened without interrupting. Because she understood what betrayal from a trusted person did to the human heart. It did not just wound, it rewrote memory. You trusted him, she said softly. Tunde's eyes cut toward her. I do not use that word lightly, but it is the right word. He held her gaze. Yes. For the first time since she had met him, Abimbola saw not the feared CEO, not the cold authority who made managers tremble, but a man who had been cut so many times by the people closest to him that he had decided to turn into the knife first. That did not excuse him, but it explained him. He gathered the files into a stack. This stays between us. No. His head lifted sharply. What no, Abimbola repeated, not between us, between everyone hurt by this. If you bury it to manage the scandal, then you are no better than him. A pulse moved in his neck. You speak as if power is simple, and you speak as if justice is optional. Their eyes locked. This time the silence between them felt different, less like a threat, more like 2 forces testing whether the other would bend. At last, Tunde said justice without evidence is noise. Then gather evidence. I am. Not only on paper. In the world outside this building. His expression shifted slightly. "What are you suggesting?" Abimbola took a breath. "The men who trapped Kunle want me to come to an address tonight. Alone." Tunde went completely still. "You were not going to tell me. I was deciding whether to walk into a criminal trap by yourself. My brother is in danger, and that makes you reckless, not useful." The cold authority was back now, but beneath it, Abimbola heard something she had never heard from him before. Concern. Hard, irritated concern. She hated that it made her chest tighten. "I know how to talk to men like that," she said. "You know how to survive men like that," he replied. "That is not the same as controlling them." The distinction landed painfully because it was true. Tunde stepped past her and shut the cabinet with decisive force. "You are not going alone." Abimbola frowned. Asking permission. He looked down at her, towering and unyielding. "Good, because you weren't going to get it." Before she could answer, footsteps echoed from the far end of the corridor. Both of them turned. It was Miriam Okike moving quickly, tablet in hand. Her eyes flicked from Tunde to Abimbola to the open files stacked against the shelf. She was too experienced to show surprise, but she saw enough to understand that something serious had broken open. "Sir," she said carefully, "Jide Balogun is requesting immediate approval to move discretionary welfare funds before close of business." Tunde's face darkened. How much large enough to matter? Freeze every transaction connected to student outreach. Miriam hesitated. Without explanation, "Yes, that will alert him." "Good." She nodded once. "Understood." Then her gaze rested briefly on Abimbola, not contemptuous, not curious, measuring. After she left, Abimbola said, "You trust her. I trust that Miriam dislikes corruption more than she fears my temper. That is not the same thing. It is close enough." He picked up the files and handed 2 to her. Abimbola blinked. "Why are you giving me these?" "Because if anything happens to me, someone else should know where the rot began." That sentence landed heavier than he seemed to realize. She looked down at the pages in her hands, lists of students, coded notes, ghost payments, masked as education support. These were not just financial records. They were a map of exploitation. "How many boys?" she whispered. Tunde's voice turned flat. "Too many." By evening, the company atmosphere had changed. Even cleaners felt it. Security teams were being quietly reassigned. Finance officers were suddenly tense. Supervisors avoided eye contact. Somewhere inside the machine of Adebayo Holdings, gears had begun grinding against each other. Abimbola finished her shift with a knot in her stomach. At 6:40, her phone vibrated. Another message from the unknown number. "Come by 8 p.m. Bring no police. Bring no hero stories. If you want the boys safe, you obey." A second image followed. This time, it was not a letterhead. It was a photo of Kunle outside his school gate, clearly taken without his knowledge. Abimbola went cold from head to toe. Tunde found her in the service corridor minutes later. One glance at her face and he knew. She showed him the phone. He read the message once, then again. When he finally looked up, there was murder in his eyes. "They are watching him now," Abimbola whispered. "Yes. They said not to bring police. I am not police." She stared at him. "You still plan to go?" Tunde slipped his phone back into his pocket. "No, I plan to end this." Something in the way he said it sent a chill through her, not because he sounded brave, because he sounded personal. As they headed toward the underground parking level, Abimbola's pulse would not slow. The night outside the service entrance looked thicker than usual, as if Lagos itself were holding its breath before violence. Inside the private garage, Tunde stopped beside a black SUV. Then he turned to face her fully. "There is something else you need to know before tonight," he said. His expression had changed again. Not rage this time. Something darker, older. Something that came from a wound that never healed. Jeed is not the first person close to me who smiled while stealing from the weak, he said. My former fiancé did the same. So did my cousin. Abimbola said nothing. Tunde opened the car door, but his eyes stayed on hers. That is why I became the man everyone fears. And for the first time, he did not sound proud of it. He sounded tired. The black SUV moved through Lagos like a blade through wet cloth. Outside, the city glowed with restless neon roadside fires, bus headlights, and the hard survival of people who could not afford to stop moving. Hawkers wove between cars. Street children knocked on tinted windows. Music spilled from open bars. Somewhere far off, thunder rolled over the lagoon. Inside the vehicle, silence sat between Abimbola and Tunde Adebayo like a third passenger. Tunde was driving himself. That alone told her this night had already crossed into territory too private for assistants and chauffeurs. Abimbola sat rigid in the front seat. Kunle's photo still burned into her mind. She kept checking her phone, though no new message came. Her fingers would not stop trembling. Tunde noticed. Fear wastes energy, he said without looking at her. She almost laughed. Only rich people say that calmly. He glanced at her once. No. Men who learned early that panic gets people killed say it calmly. The answer settled between them. Abimbola turned to the window, jaw tight. She had no patience tonight for philosophical cruelty disguised as wisdom. Not when her brother was being watched. Not when boys were being trapped with forged debt and company seals. Yet somewhere under her anger she understood what he meant. Poor people panicked in private and performed control in public. If fear showed too much, it attracted the wrong eyes. If courage showed too much, it attracted the same ones. Where are we going? She asked. To the address. You told me you planned to end this. I do. That sounds like a threat, not a strategy. Tunde's mouth shifted in the faintest hint of something, not quite amusement, not quite respect. It can be both. They drove past a row of warehouses and into an older industrial district, where even the streetlights looked exhausted. The address from the message led to a narrow service road behind a former shipping depot, now partly converted into low-rent offices and illegal storage units. The kind of place that looked invisible from the front and dangerous from every other angle. Tunde killed the engine 2 streets away. No police, Abimbola asked. Not yet. You don't trust them. I trust institutions only after I know how deep the rot goes. She hated that his answer made sense. He turned toward her fully now, the dim dashboard light carving hard shadows across his face. You stay in the car if I tell you. No. Abimbola, my brother is part of this. That is exactly why you will obey if I give an order. I don't work for you outside that building. His gaze sharpened. Tonight you work for survival. Before she could answer, her phone buzzed. A new message. Come behind Unit 7. Alone. 5 minutes. Beneath it was another picture, blurred dark, but enough to show a boy's school bag on concrete. Kunle's bag. Abimbola's breath caught. She reached for the door handle immediately, but Tunde caught her wrist. Not painfully, firmly. Look at me. She did. His eyes were cold, controlled, and very alive. Anything you feel right now, fear, rage, guilt, put it behind your teeth. They will use all of it. She swallowed hard, then nodded once. They moved through the shadows separately, Tunde circling wide, while Abimbola approached the rear of Unit 7. The air smelled of rust, engine oil, rain-soaked dust, and something sour rotting in a nearby drain. Her heartbeat sounded louder than the traffic. A figure stepped from behind a stack of old pallets. Not Kunle, a thick-set man in cheap cologne and an expensive fake watch smiled at her. You came. Where is my brother? No greeting. You educated girls are rude, I said. Where is he? He clicked his tongue. Still proud. That is fine. Pride softens after debt. Abimbola's eyes darted past him. 2 more men lingered near a side door. Another shadow moved above on a broken walkway. Too many. Her voice dropped. My brother signed nothing. Wrong. He accepted opportunity. The man held up a folder. Transport stipend, registration fee, fast-track processing, all recoverable. It's fraud. He grinned. It is paperwork. And if we refuse, his smile faded. Then boys disappear into harder jobs. Abimbola's whole body went cold. Before she could speak again, another voice came from the dark. Interesting business model. All heads turned. Tunde Adebayo stepped into the open like he had been invited. The man with the fake watch stiffened visibly. Who are you? Tunde's expression did not change. The man whose company name you were foolish enough to print on your bait. Something in his tone unsettled even the men who did not recognize him. But the thick-set man recovered quickly. This is private business. No, Tunde said. Private business requires consent. This is predation. One of the other men swore under his breath. Another lifted his phone as if to warn someone. Tunde noticed everything. So he said softly, Which of you reports to Jeed Balogan? The reaction was instant. Tiny, but enough. One man looked left too quickly. Another stepped back. The thick-set one went still. There it was. Confirmation. Abimbola felt it too. Jida's shadow reached even here. Then chaos cracked open. A side door banged. Someone shouted. The man above on the walkway started down the stairs. The thick-set man lunged for Abimbola's arm, and Tunde moved first. Fast. Brutal. No wasted motion. He drove his elbow into the man's throat, spun, and slammed another into a metal railing hard enough to make it scream. Abimbola stumbled backward as a third rushed her. She grabbed the nearest loose pole from a broken pallet stack and swung with both hands. The blow caught the attacker across the forearm. He cursed. Tunde shouted, Get back! But she saw it then. Kunle's school bag half hidden inside the open side room. She ran. Inside the room was smaller than she expected. An old desk, plastic chairs, stacks of photocopied forms, bottles of water, stolen legitimacy arranged like an office for despair. Her eyes raced across the space. No Kunle, just the bag. Relief collided with new fear. They had used it as bait. On the desk lay scattered papers, several stamped with Adebayo Holdings Welfare Division. Others held student lists, debt conversion codes, transport routes. She snatched a handful instinctively. Then something else caught her eye. A small velvet pouch torn open near the desk leg. Something metallic glinted beside it. She bent quickly and froze. It was a worn old pendant on a chain. Round. Gold faded, scratched from time. Her breath stopped. No. No. Her hand shook as she lifted it. She knew this necklace. Not because she had seen this exact piece before, but because the design mirrored the battered pendant she had worn since childhood, the one Mama Sade said was tied around her neck on the day she was found crying beside a roadside after a fire no one could properly explain. This pendant bore the same carved symbol, a rising sun over river lines. Her pulse roared in her ears. Outside, metal crashed. Someone yelled. But for one suspended moment, all sound vanished behind the terrible pull of memory. Mama Sade's voice from years ago. You had this when I found you, child. Keep it. One day it may tell you where grief began. Abimbola Tunde's voice snapped the world back into motion. He appeared at the doorway, breathing hard, one sleeve torn, fury still alive in every line of him. He took in the scattered documents in her hands, then the pendant. His expression changed. Completely. Not confusion. Recognition. He stepped closer, eyes fixed on the necklace. "Where did you get that?" She held it tighter. It was here. His gaze jumped to her throat. Only then did he seem to notice the chain she always wore beneath her uniform. He had seen it before in passing, but tonight, in the broken light of the illegal office, he saw the symbol clearly as she pulled her own pendant free with trembling fingers. 2 necklaces, same crest, same shape, same history. Tunde looked like the floor had shifted beneath him. "That mark," he said slowly. "I know it." Abimbola stared at him. "How?" He took a step back, as if distance might help him think. But his face had lost all coldness now. What remained was something deeper. Shock laced with memory. "When I was a boy," he said, voice low, "there was a car accident outside Ibadan. I was with my mother. We would have died in that ditch if a woman had not pulled us out before the fuel caught." Abimbola said nothing. Her hands were ice. She wore a pendant with that symbol, he continued. "My mother never forgot her face. She said the woman had a little girl with her, very young, crying. The child wore the same mark." The room tilted. Abimbola's throat tightened painfully. "A little girl." "Yes." He looked at her necklace again, then at the one in her hand. Outside, sirens began in the far distance, not close, but coming. Tunde's face hardened, though not at her, at the truth assembling itself too quickly to ignore. He looked around the room once, scanning the papers, the forged forms, the abandoned evidence. Then back at her. "This is bigger than student fraud." Abimbola's voice barely came out. "Who is that symbol?" Tunde swallowed, and for the first time since she had known him, his answer carried uncertainty. "I don't know yet," he said, "but I know one thing." He held her gaze fully. "You were never meant to stay lost." By the time they left the warehouse district, the rain had started. Not a soft rain. Not the kind that cooled the city and made it smell briefly clean. This rain came down hard, angry, and relentless, beating against the SUV roof like a warning that had arrived too late. Abimbola sat in the passenger seat with both pendants in her lap. She had not said more than 10 words in 20 minutes. Outside Lagos blurred into streaks of white. Headlights flooded gutters, impatient horns, and bent figures running beneath torn umbrellas. Inside the vehicle, the air felt too small for everything that had just happened. The forged student files were stacked on the back seat. The fake office, the criminal recruiters, Jeed's name, the matching pendant. The story of a woman who had once saved Tunde and his mother, a little girl with the same symbol, a child who vanished from the world and somehow became a janitor with a sick mother and a frightened brother. It was too much, too fast. And in the middle of it all, one question would not stop pounding in Abimbola's mind. Who had she been before poverty swallowed her name? Tunde kept both hands on the steering wheel. His face looked carved from something darker than stone. "Say something," Abimbola whispered at last. He glanced at her briefly. "About which part?" "Any part." Her voice cracked. "The criminal network inside your company. The fact that my brother was used as bait. The fact that I may not be who I thought I was. The fact that you looked at that pendant like it was a ghost." Rain hammered harder against the windshield. Tunde exhaled slowly through his nose. "I am thinking. That is a luxury." His jaw tightened. She regretted the sharpness immediately, but not enough to take it back. Because it was true. Thinking was a privilege. Poor people usually had to react first and understand later. Tunde drove in silence for another block, then pulled beneath the covered entrance of a private medical annex owned quietly by Adebayo Holdings. Security rushed forward with umbrellas, but one look at his face kept them from asking questions. He stepped out, circled. The car opened her door himself. "Bring the pendants," he said. Why are we here to make sure your brother is safe first? She blinked. Kunle, he nodded once. Miriam already moved him. A strange mix of relief and anger flooded her so hard she nearly swayed. You moved my brother without telling me I protected him. You decided for me. I kept him alive. That answer cut too close to reason to fight cleanly. Abimbola stepped out into the rain-scented air and followed him inside. The annex was quiet, discreet, expensive in the way only old money knew how to be. Cream walls, soft lights, security hidden rather than displayed, no crowds, no noise, the kind of place where the powerful sent relatives they did not want the public to see. A nurse led them into a small family waiting suite, and there on a grey sofa, wrapped in a blanket too clean to belong to him, sat Kunle. The moment he saw Abimbola, he sprang up. Sister. She crossed the room so fast she almost collided with him, pulling him into her arms with such force that he winced. She pulled back instantly. Did they hurt you again? No. No. His eyes flicked nervously to Tunde, then back to her. A woman came to school before they could reach me. She said she worked for the company legal team. She took me somewhere safe. They checked if I was followed. Abimbola closed her eyes briefly. Miriam. That efficient, unreadable woman had moved faster than fear. Kunle lowered his voice. Who is he really? Abimbola looked at Tunde. Tunde looked back without expression. The man currently solving a problem. Kunle stared like most young people from poor neighborhoods stared at wealth when it suddenly stood within reach, half awe, half distrust, all caution. Abimbola touched his face again, this time more gently. You'll stay here tonight. Do you understand? Kunle hesitated. What about Mama Sade? I'll go to her soon. No, Tunde said. Both siblings turned. He stood near the doorway, rain still darkening one shoulder of his suit. It is no longer safe to separate yourselves carelessly, he said. Your mother will be brought here. Abimbola frowned. She hates hospitals. She will hate being targeted more. She wanted to refuse, to defend the small dignity of making decisions for her own family. But deep down, she knew the ground had shifted. The people behind this were no longer faceless scammers on the edges of a corporation. They were connected to executive power, forged records, hidden histories, and maybe to the truth of her birth. So instead she asked, What now? Tunde was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Now we stop reacting. That same night, in a private conference room on the top floor of the annex, the evidence spread across the table beneath bright white lights. Student lists, payment approvals, internal signatures, copies of debt conversion forms, photos from the fake recruitment site, the matching pendants placed side by side like a question that refused to stay buried. Present with them were only 4 people, Tunde, Abimbola, Miriam, and an older woman with silver-rimmed glasses named Barrister Ifeoma Nwankwo, head of confidential legal compliance for Adebayo Holdings. If Abimbola had seen her on the street, she might have assumed she was a retired school principal. But the room shifted slightly whenever Ifeoma spoke. That was real power. Quiet, precise, dangerous to the guilty. Ifeoma adjusted a document and looked toward Abimbola. Everything you say tonight may affect criminal exposure, board liability, succession, vulnerabilities, and prior sealed investigations. I need accuracy, not performance. Can you do that? Abimbola met her eyes. Yes? And she did. She recounted the messages. Kunle's recruitment, the debt threat, the fake office, the men at the warehouse, the files, the pendant. She left nothing out. When she finished, Ifeoma sat back slowly. Mr. Balogun has overreached, she said. Tunde's voice was flat. That suggests you are not surprised. Ifeoma did not flinch. I have been suspicious of operations for months, but suspicion is not evidence. Your management style has not exactly encouraged whistleblowers. The rebuke landed cleanly. Miriam kept her face neutral. Abimbola saw it, though, saw the truth of it, saw Tunde absorb it like a man too used to pain to show when a knife went in. Ifeoma continued. The student exploitation scheme is one matter, but the pendant complicates everything. Tunde leaned forward. Say what you mean. The lawyer slid an old scanned document from a thin archival file she had requested after leaving the warehouse. Across the top, faint but visible, was a name. Adewale Ogunsiwaju Abimbola's pulse stuttered. This man, Ifeoma said, was a minority shareholder in the early years of the company. Honest, persistent, difficult to buy. He had access to welfare records, procurement flows, and certain off-book transfer patterns that predate your tenure, Mr. Adebayo. Tunde's eyes darkened. I know the name. Ifeoma nodded. You should. He disappeared shortly after submitting a confidential concern tied to fund diversion and coercive labor channels operating under charitable fronts. Abimbola went still. Disappeared, she whispered. No formal body found, said Ifeoma. No prosecution. Just a fire missing records, and a child listed unofficially as presumed dead. The room changed. Everything inside Abimbola seemed to stop at once. A child, presumed dead. Her fingers curled tightly against the edge of the table. Tunde stared at the lawyer. Are you telling me? I am telling you, Ifeoma said calmly, that if the pendant belongs to the Ogunsiwaju household registry mark, and if Abimbola was found as a child after the same incident window, then she may be connected directly to the disappearance of Adewale Ogunsiwaju. Miriam inhaled softly. Kunle's debt trap, Jide's forged student scheme, a missing shareholder, a child erased from records, a pendant no one could explain. The story was no longer climbing. It was opening beneath them. Abimbola's voice came out thin. Connected how? No one answered immediately. Ifeoma chose her words with care. Possibly as his daughter. Silence. Not shock silence, impact silence. The kind that leaves ringing in the bones. Abimbola looked down at the pendant near her hand as if it belonged to someone else. All her life she had known hunger work, survival debt, shame, resilience. She had known Mama Saad's rough, loving hands, Kunle's quiet loyalty. She had known how rich people could look through you as if God had forgotten to finish making your face. She had never known bloodline, never expected one. And now this room of powerful strangers was suggesting that the emptiness at the beginning of her life had not been emptiness at all. It had been theft. Tunde broke the silence first. Who knew, he asked. Ifeoma's gaze sharpened. Very few. Fewer still are alive. But if the old case and the current welfare fraud intersect, then someone inside the highest levels of the company preserved the original method. Exploit the poor, hide the ledger, erase the witness, Miriam said quietly. That is not Jide's scale. No, said Ifeoma, it isn't. Everyone in the room understood what that meant. Jide was not the root. He was a branch. Abimbola forced herself to breathe. Then who is above him? Before anyone could answer, the conference room door opened. A security aide stepped in pale-faced and handed Miriam a sealed note. She read it. Her expression changed at once. Tunde. He took the note, unfolded it, and read silently. Then his entire face turned to iron. Abimbola stood. What is it? He looked at her. For the first time since the warehouse, the old ruthlessness returned not as cruelty this time, but as battle readiness. There is a gala tomorrow night, he said. Annual foundation event. Board members, donors, press, politicians. Ifeoma understood first. They plan to move money in public cover. Miriam nodded, and Jide requested that Abimbola's contract status be updated this afternoon. Abimbola frowned. Why Miriam's answer came like a slap. Because by tomorrow night they intended to remove you from the building permanently. Tunde folded the note in half once, very neatly. Then he said the words that changed the direction of the war. "She's coming to the gala with me." The room erupted at once. "No!" The word came from Abimbola and Barrister Ifeoma at the same time. Tunde did not even blink. Rain tapped softly now against the dark annex windows, gentler than before, but the quiet in the conference room had become sharper, more dangerous. The files on the table seemed to glow beneath the white lights like evidence waiting for blood. Ifeoma set both palms on the table. "Absolutely not. If she is connected to the Ogunsiwaju case, then parading her into a public gala before we secure the chain of evidence is reckless." "It is necessary," Tunde replied. "It is theatrical. It is bait." Abimbola stared at him. "You want to use me?" Tunde's eyes shifted to hers. "They already marked you. I am changing the ground." She almost laughed from disbelief. "That is a polished way to say the same thing." Miriam, who had remained silent until then, spoke carefully. "He's not entirely wrong." Abimbola turned to her. Miriam folded her hands over her tablet. "If they planned to remove you after changing your contract status, then they are already accelerating, which means they know something has shifted. If we hide you now, they may destroy the remaining trails before legal containment is ready." Ifeoma shook her head. "Or they may panic and attack in public." Tunde's voice stayed calm. "Good. Panic produces mistakes. And mistakes can kill people," Ifeoma said sharply. That landed, because everyone in the room knew the kind of people they were dealing with now. Not merely thieves, not merely executives skimming funds. These were people who erased children from records, built predatory channels beneath charity programs, and turned company systems into traps for the desperate. Abimbola looked at the two pendants on the table. One had hung at her throat for years like a question no one could answer. The other had appeared in an illegal office like a hand reaching out of the grave. She felt tired all the way into her bones. Not sleepy tired, life tired. The kind of tired that comes when the past arrives all at once and demands payment for every unanswered thing. "What happens at this gala?" she asked. Miriam answered first. "It's the annual Adebayo Foundation night. Public donations, scholarship announcements, hospital partnerships, smiling faces over hidden money. Board members attend, yes." "Jeed?" "Certainly." Abimbola looked at Tunde again. "And whoever is above him?" A silence passed. Then Ifeoma said, "Most likely." That changed everything. Not because it made the danger smaller, because it finally gave it shape. Abimbola inhaled slowly. "If I go, what exactly do you expect?" Tunde stepped closer to the table and placed one hand beside the spread documents. "You enter where they do not expect dignity. You stand where they intended shame. You let them look at you, let them react, let them reveal who is afraid. You make that sound easy. I know it won't be. Then why do you speak like it is?" His face hardened. "Because fear spreads faster when leaders perform it." Abimbola held his gaze. "And what am I in this plan?" "A witness. A weapon. A test." That last word hung in the air longer than the others. A test. Because that was what this felt like now. Not only of courage, of character. His answer came low and steady. "You are the truth they failed to bury." No one moved. Not Miriam, not Ifeoma, not even Abimbola. The words struck somewhere deep because they were both too large and too intimate. For a moment she hated him for saying them. Then she hated that some part of her wanted to believe them. Ifeoma broke the silence. "If this proceeds, then safeguards are non-negotiable. Legal recording channels, off-site duplicates, silent security layers. Press timing, controlled exits. No improvisation." Tunde gave a short nod. "Done." Also, Ifeoma continued. "The old case file must be reopened in parallel tonight. Quietly, And I want archived board attendance from the year of the Ogunsiwaju fire. Miriam was already typing. I'll pull it. Abimbola stood still, listening to powerful people move the machinery of protection around her with efficient words and expensive confidence. It felt strange, almost unreal, not because she trusted them fully, but because all her life systems had only ever moved against people like her, never for them. Tunde turned toward her again. You should rest. She let out a disbelieving breath. Rest, you'll need a clear head tomorrow. My life may be stolen from the past. My brother was hunted today. My mother is being moved under security. And you think I can sleep? His expression shifted, not softer exactly, but less armored. No, he said. I think you are exhausted, and exhausted people make bargains with despair. That was too perceptive. She looked away first. Later that night, after arrangements had been made for Mama Sade's transfer, and Kunle had finally fallen asleep in a guarded room down the hall, Abimbola stood alone in a small balcony alcove outside the annex corridor. The rain had stopped. The city below breathed in restless lights. Lagos never truly slept. It only changed masks. She pressed her arms around herself and stared out without seeing much. Somewhere inside the building, nurses moved quietly. Doors opened and shut. Air conditioning hummed. Expensive safety wrapped itself around wounded truths. Behind her, a door opened softly. She did not turn. I said I wanted to be alone. Telling me what you want has not been your problem, Tunde said. You do it often. That pulled the faintest unwilling curve at the edge of her mouth. He stepped beside her, but did not crowd her. For a few seconds they simply stood there looking over the city. Then Abimbola said, When did you become like this? He did not pretend not to understand. Which version, the one everyone fears? His gaze stayed on the skyline. A long time ago. That is not an answer. It is the only one I owe easily. She let the silence stretch, then said quietly, You said your former fiancé betrayed you. And your cousin. Yes. What did they do? For a moment she thought he would refuse. Instead, he spoke with the flat precision of a man describing wounds after the blood is gone. My father became ill years ago. Not publicly. Quietly. During that time there were succession tensions inside the company. My cousin Femi Adebayo believed he deserved more power. My fiancée Nneka Okafor believed she deserved more access. Together they leaked acquisition strategy, manipulated supplier channels, and redirected relief funds during a flood response operation. Abimbola turned toward him fully. Relief funds. Yes. For victims, yes. Her voice sharpened. And they stole that. They did. What happened? Tunde's face became unreadable again. I found out too late to prevent all the damage, but early enough to end both of them professionally. Professionally. He looked at her then. Did you want a more violent answer? No. I wanted to know whether justice happened. Something dark flickered in his eyes. Some did. Not enough. That answer told her everything it needed to. The rich had versions of punishment the poor rarely called justice. Reputation damage, frozen accounts, quiet exile, strategic humiliation. Meanwhile, poor people stole bread and met prison. Abimbola leaned on the balcony rail. So you decided softness was weakness? No, he said. I decided visible softness invited wolves. That sounds lonelier. It is. The honesty of it startled them both. He looked away first this time. She studied his profile in the dim light. Hard lines, controlled breathing. A face trained never to ask to be understood. For the first time, she saw clearly that his cruelty had not come from pleasure. It had come from corruption of survival. Pain turned into method. Betrayal turned into policy. Still wrong, still harmful, but human. My mother says bitter people drink poison hoping the right enemy dies, she said. Tunde let out a small, humorless laugh. Your mother sounds dangerous. She is, especially when she can still stand. That almost became a shared smile. Almost. Then his phone vibrated. He read the message, and every trace of that fragile ease vanished. What is it? Abimbola asked. He looked up slowly. Miriam found the archived board attendance, and his jaw locked. The year Adewale Ogunsiwaju disappeared, one committee member signed off on the emergency closure of the welfare audit, the child fatality memo, and the foundation restructuring. Abimbola felt cold again. Tunde held her gaze with an expression she had never seen on him before. Not just anger. Something closer to grief sharpened into rage. My aunt, he said. Chief Mrs. Ronke Adebayo. The name settled like a blade between them. She knew that name. Everyone in Lagos business circles knew it. Elegant widow, philanthropist, board elder, public moralist, a woman praised in newspapers for charity dinners, women's leadership panels, and orphan sponsorship campaigns. Abimbola's mouth went dry. The same foundation, she whispered. The same empire, Tunde replied. Pieces crashed together violently in her mind. The scholarship fraud, the hidden welfare manipulations, the child erased after a fire, a board elder known for charity, a respected aunt sitting above the company like a blessing while rot spread beneath her shadow. Abimbola stepped back from the balcony rail. She knew. Yes, she helped bury it, yes. And she's going to be at the gala tomorrow. Tunde's voice dropped into something lethal. Yes. Far below them, a siren wailed and faded into the city. Inside the annex, a door closed softly somewhere down the corridor. The whole world felt suddenly too normal for what had just become true. Abimbola looked at him. If your aunt is behind this, then this isn't just corruption. No, Tunde said. What is it then? He did not answer immediately. When he did, each word came like stone. It's family treason dressed as charity. And in that moment, Abimbola understood something terrifying. Tomorrow night would not only expose a fraud, it would force blood to stand against blood. And somewhere beneath all of it, a buried past was beginning to breathe again. By 6 the next evening, the city's richest people were already arriving. The Adebayo Foundation Gala unfolded inside the Grand Meridian Hall like a performance polished for television and memory. Gold light spilled from crystal chandeliers. A string quartet played beside a wall of white orchids. Waiters in black gloves moved through the crowd with trays of champagne. Cameras flashed. Politicians smiled. Business magnates embraced each other with the warm, false intimacy of people who would sell one another by morning if profit required it. On the giant screens above the stage, the foundation slogan shone in elegant gold hope. Dignity. Future. Abimbola almost felt sick when she saw it. Hope had been forged into debt papers. Dignity had been denied at security desks. Future had been sold to boys like Kunle. Now the lie glittered in 12-foot letters while the city applauded itself. She stood in a private preparation room off the main ballroom, staring at her reflection as stylists made final adjustments to a gown she had never asked for. It was not loud, not covered in jewels, not the kind of dress rich women used to scream value without words. It was deep emerald, simple in its lines, graceful in its power. Miriam had chosen it. Why this one, Abimbola had asked when it was brought in. Miriam had answered without looking up from her tablet, because they expect you to arrive looking borrowed. This one looks like you belong wherever you decide to stand. Now, as the last pin was secured into her hair, Abimbola barely recognized herself. Not because the dress changed who she was, because for the first time someone had dressed her as if her dignity needed no apology. Still her hands trembled. The pendant lay hidden beneath the fabric at her throat. The second pendant found in the fake office rested in a small evidence pouch inside Miriam's case. Barrister Ifeoma had positioned legal observers in 3 separate wings of the hotel. Silent security teams had been planted among catering staff and technical crews. Duplicate evidence files had already been sent off-site. A journalist known for refusing hush money had received a timed package scheduled to release if certain signals failed. The plan was careful. The danger was still alive. A knock sounded. Before Abimbola could answer, the door opened and Tunde Adebayo entered. He wore a black tuxedo cut with ruthless precision. He looked exactly like the man the city feared, controlled, immaculate, untouchable. But when his eyes found her, something shifted. Not softness. Something quieter. Recognition, perhaps. For one suspended moment, neither spoke. Then he said, "You look like they underestimated the wrong woman." Abimbola exhaled once. "That is either encouragement or a threat. With you, I'm never fully sure." The faintest shadow of a smile touched his mouth and disappeared. "Good," he said. "Stay difficult." She looked at him more closely. "And you? What about me? You look like you're going to a funeral." "I am." That answer silenced the room. Because it was true. This gala was the elegant burial of lies, or the place where truth itself would be buried again. Tunde stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Once we walk in, watch faces, not words. Faces. Jide will perform confidence. Others will perform surprise. The one to study is Ronke. She has had years to perfect innocence." Abimbola swallowed. "And if she suspects, she already does." He offered his arm. "Come." The ballroom changed when they entered together. It did not happen all at once. It rippled. First the cameras turned, then conversations thinned, then heads turned in sequence across the room like wind bending a field. Because the ruthless CEO had arrived with a woman no one expected to see at his side, and because some of them recognized her. Not by name, by class, by face. By the insult of seeing someone from the cleaning staff enter through the same doors as ministers and chairpersons. Abimbola felt it instantly, the weight of judgment, curiosity, contempt, hunger for scandal. She kept walking. Tunde did not slow. At the center of the ballroom, donors approached with polished smiles. "Tunde," one senator exclaimed, "you've been impossible to pin down." "Perhaps because I did not wish to be pinned," Tunde replied. The man laughed too hard. A woman in diamonds glanced at Abimbola. "And who is this?" Tunde answered before Abimbola could. "The guest you will speak to with respect." The woman's smile faltered. Good, Abimbola thought. Let them choke a little. Across the room she saw Jide Balogan. Perfect tuxedo, perfect posture, perfect smile, but not perfect eyes. The moment he recognized her, something dark flashed beneath the charm. Shock first, then calculation, then a swift look toward a table near the stage. Abimbola followed his gaze. That was where Chief Mrs. Ronke Adebayo sat. She wore ivory silk and old authority, like both had been tailored to her body. Cameras loved her face. Society columns adored her posture. She looked every inch the moral matriarch of a respected family empire. When she saw Abimbola beside Tunde, her hand stilled on the stem of her glass. Only for a second. But a second was enough. Tunde felt it too. Without moving his lips, he murmured, "There." Abimbola's heart pounded. She knows. Yes. A master of self-control would have looked confused, offended, mildly surprised. Ronka had looked alarmed before memory taught her to hide it. That was the crack. Then the program began. A master of ceremonies took the stage. Applause rolled through the room. Videos played showing scholarships, smiling children, new clinics branded generosity wrapped in piano music and clean narration. Abimbola watched boys on the screen laughing in uniforms and wanted to throw something. How many of them had been real? How many had been bait? By the time Chief Mrs. Ronka Adebayo was invited to give the keynote blessing, the ballroom had returned to apparent calm. She rose with practiced grace and stepped to the podium. "My dear friends," she began, voice warm and measured, "tonight we celebrate compassion." Abimbola almost laughed aloud. Compassion? The word floated from the mouth of a woman who might have helped erase a child. Ronke continued praising legacy, family, duty, service, ethical stewardship. Every sentence sounded clean enough to print in gold. Then came the moment. As arranged, a scholarship recognition segment was introduced. Several student names were announced, photos prepared, donor commitments highlighted. And then Tunde stood. No microphone, no warning. He simply stood, and the ballroom quieted from instinct. People feared his interruptions because they usually cost someone power. Tunde Ronka said from the podium, still smiling, "Would you like to add a few words?" "Yes," he said. He stepped into the aisle, took the spare microphone from a startled technician, and turned not to the audience first, but to Jide. "Before we celebrate scholarship," he said calmly, "perhaps we should define whether we mean education or debt trafficking." The silence that followed was immediate and violent. A glass slipped somewhere in the room and shattered. Jide's face drained, then recovered. "Sir, I'm not sure what Tunde cut him off. You signed transport approvals, conversion lists, and false disbursement channels under operations using the foundation name." Murmurs exploded across the hall. Ronka's smile froze. Jide spread his hands with offended professionalism. "This is not the forum for internal misunderstanding." "No," Tunde said. "This is the forum where you hoped no one would speak." He turned toward the screens. At a signal from Miriam near the technical station, the foundation video vanished. Documents appeared instead. Scanned forms, payment routes, student lists, approval signatures. Then a photograph from the illegal office. Then another. Then Jide's name enlarged 12 feet high over the ballroom. Gasps ripped through the guests. Jide's composure cracked. "This is illegal. Predation is illegal." Ifeoma's voice answered from the side aisle as she stepped forward with 2 external legal officers. "Documentation is not." The room lost its elegant balance at once. Some guests stood, others reached for phones. Security shifted. Politicians backed away from cameras as if scandal were contagious. And in that unraveling, Jide made his mistake. He turned not toward escape doors, not toward the lawyers, but toward Ronka. Just one glance. One panicked glance. That was all. Tunde saw it. Abimbola saw it. The whole war moved in that glance. Ronke understood too late that her creature had looked back at its maker. Her voice hardened instantly. "Jide Balogun, if you have abused this foundation, you will answer alone." Jide stared at her in disbelief. Alone, there it was. Betrayal, meeting betrayal in public light. He laughed once, harsh and ugly. After all these years, the ballroom went dead still. Ronka's eyes flashed murder beneath composure. Tunde began walking toward the stage. "Say it clearly," he said. Jide backed up a step. "You think this started with me? You think I built the channels, I inherited them, I refined them, I served the house that taught me how?" Every camera in the room lifted. Ronka snapped. "Stop talking." But fear had already broken discipline. Jide pointed at her with a shaking hand. "Tell them whose office signed the old welfare closures. Tell them who buried the Ogunsiwaju audit. Tell them who approved the child death memo when no body was ever found." The ballroom erupted. Abimbola felt the air leave her lungs. Ronka's mask finally shattered. Not publicly in full. She was too trained for that. But enough. Enough for the truth to show its bones. And then, in the very second everyone looked toward her, a waiter near the east exit moved wrong too fast, too direct, hand inside jacket. Tunde saw him first. So did Abimbola. Not a waiter. A plant. Coming toward the stage. Coming toward the evidence table Miriam had prepared. Coming toward the last chance to destroy what remained. Tunde Abimbola shouted. The man lunged, and the ballroom exploded into chaos. Chaos tore through the ballroom like a storm finally breaking its leash. Guests screamed and stumbled away from the stage. Chairs scraped, glass shattered. Cameras dipped, rose, and turned wild as security rushed from every direction. The fake waiter lunged toward the evidence table with one purpose only: to destroy, snatch, or scatter whatever could still be buried. But this time the truth was not standing alone. Tunde Adebayo moved first. He caught the man by the shoulder just as the intruder reached the table and drove him sideways into a row of floral stands. White orchids crashed to the floor. The man fought like someone who knew failure would cost more than prison. Another disguised staffer pushed through the crowd from the left, trying to get to the control booth where Miriam stood guarding the release files. Abimbola did not freeze. Not this time. She kicked off her heels and ran. She did not think about the dress, or the staring crowd, or what rich people would say tomorrow about a janitor girl moving through their polished world like she belonged there. She only saw what mattered. Miriam cornered near the console, a second attacker closing in the evidence screens, still glowing above the hall like judgment. Abimbola grabbed a metal sign stand from beside a sponsor display and swung it low. The attacker stumbled hard, crashing into a camera tripod. Miriam reacted instantly, slamming her elbow into his jaw with far more force than Abimbola would have guessed that elegant, composed woman possessed. "Remind me," Miriam said through clenched teeth, to never attend charity events again. Despite everything, Abimbola almost laughed. Across the stage, Chief Mrs. Ronke Adebayo stood frozen for only a second before instinct returned. She turned to leave through a private side exit. Too late. Barrister Ifeoma Nwankwo stepped into her path with 2 legal officers and 3 uniformed anti-fraud agents who had entered the hall the moment Miriam triggered the secondary alert. Chief Mrs. Ronke Adebayo Ifeoma said, "Cool as polished steel, you are not leaving." Ronke lifted her chin, outrage wrapping itself around her like a cloak. "This is absurd. I am the victim of a malicious ambush." Ifeoma did not blink. "Then you will enjoy the opportunity to explain your signatures." At the center aisle, Jide Balogun tried once to bolt. He made it 3 steps. Then he found Tunde in front of him. Jide's face had collapsed entirely now. No charm, no polish, only fear with expensive tailoring draped over it. "You don't understand," he said hoarsely. "She built all of it. I only maintained the channels." Tunde's voice was terrifying in its quiet. "And the boys," Jide swallowed. "The labor conversions were already profitable when I inherited them." Tunde stepped closer. "And the boys?" Jide's mouth trembled. I signed the papers. The answer seemed to rip through the hall, because it was no longer rumor, no longer inference, no longer elegant suspicion. It was confession. Abimbola stood perfectly still as those words landed in her bones. She thought of Kunle's bruised face, thought of unknown boys whose names had become line items, thought of mothers turned away at gates because poor grief embarrassed wealthy institutions. She had wanted justice. But justice, when it finally arrived, did not feel clean. It felt like rage carrying paperwork. Within minutes, the ballroom transformed from gala to investigation scene. Phones were seized. Control rooms were locked down. Guests were told to remain where they were. Some politicians protested loudly until cameras turned toward them, and they remembered that reputations also bled. The giant screens continued to display the forged files. Signatures, dates, payment routes, archival approvals, and the old welfare closure documents tied to the Ogunsiwaju case. And then came the last blow. At Ifeoma's signal, one final scanned page appeared, a faded incident report from years ago, the night of the fire, the closure of the internal inquiry, the notation listing a child as presumed dead. Below it, authorization initials later matched through archive records to Ronke Adebayo. The hall went silent again. Not fearful silence, condemning silence. Ronke, for the first time all night, lost control completely. She was supposed to be gone, she snapped, turning toward Abimbola before she could stop herself. The whole room heard it, every camera, every guest, every officer. Abimbola felt the words hit her like a hand across the face, not because they hurt, because they proved everything. Ronke seemed to realize her mistake 1 second too late. Her expression changed, trying to rebuild itself, but confession had already escaped in raw form. Ifeoma's voice cut through the room. "Record that," an officer answered. "Already done." Ronke looked at Abimbola with naked hatred, now stripped of matriarch grace and philanthropic poise. "You have no idea what men like your father would have destroyed." Abimbola stared back, pulse steadying into something colder. "My father tried to stop monsters like you." Ronke laughed bitterly. "Your father was naive." "No," Abimbola said. "He was honest. That only looks naive to thieves." It was the first time she had ever spoken of the man as my father. The words felt strange and true. By midnight, arrests had begun. Jide Balogun was led away first, shouting half-formed excuses that sounded smaller with every step. Ronke Adebayo left under formal escort, silent now, face rigid with collapsed superiority. Several complicit officers from Operations and the Foundation Division were detained before dawn. Emergency injunctions froze connected accounts. Media outlets exploded with the story before the hotel carpets had fully dried from spilled champagne and rain-soaked footprints. The city woke to scandal, but inside the annex another kind of mourning arrived. Mama Sade had been moved safely during the night. Kunla slept without fear for the first time in days. Legal teams worked in adjoining rooms. Doctors came and went quietly. And in a private sitting room just after sunrise, Abimbola sat with a folder in her lap. Inside it were the first verified results from the reopened archives, registry photographs, shareholder records, witness notes, a burned Edge family inventory, and a preliminary identification link placing the recovered pendant symbol within the household records of Adewale Ogunsiwaju. No full ceremony, no dramatic music, no instant restoration of everything lost. Just paper. Paper proving she had once belonged to a life someone tried to erase. Tunde stood near the window while she read. "You don't have to decide anything today," he said. Abimbola looked up. "About what?" "About your name, your inheritance, your place in the company case. Any of it." She closed the folder slowly. "Do you think money is what I'm thinking about?" "So." "Good." He turned then, fully facing her. For once he looked tired in an honest way. No performance, no armor sharpened for battle. "The workers will be paid back," he said. "The welfare fund will be rebuilt under external oversight. The scholarship channels will be reopened properly. The hospital trust too." Abimbola studied him. "Because of the scandal?" "Because it should have been done long ago. That mattered more." She rose and walked to the window beside him. Outside, Lagos moved as it always did, vendors' buses, horns, survival. A city too alive to pause for any one family's reckoning. "My whole life," she said quietly, "I thought survival was the best I could ask from the world." Tunde said nothing. "I thought dignity was something poor people had to defend alone. I thought powerful people only looked down, never inward." He accepted that without defense. Then Abimbola turned toward him. "You were cruel," she said. "Yes, you made fear into leadership. Yes, you hurt people who never betrayed you because others did." A long pause. Yes, the honesty of it mattered more than apology would have just then. She nodded once. "Then if you want to change, change with actions, not speeches." His answer came immediately. "I will." She believed he meant it, not because he was good, because he was finally tired of being less than he could have been. Later that afternoon, when Mama Sade was strong enough to speak for more than a few minutes, Abimbola sat by her bedside holding her hand. Kunla slept curled in a chair nearby. Mama Sade listened to everything in pieces about the gala, the arrests, the pendant, the file, the father whose name had returned from ash. When Abimbola finished, the older woman's eyes filled with tears. "I always knew someone had stolen from something important," she whispered. Abimbola's throat tightened. "Why didn't you tell me?" Mama Sade smiled sadly. "Because I had no clue. Only a frightened child and a necklace. I was afraid that if I told the world would come and take you again." Abimbola then pressed her forehead against Mama Sade's hand. Mama Sade's fingers moved weakly into her hair. "Then I am the richest woman in the world." A week later, Adebayo Holdings announced sweeping reforms: external audits, criminal cooperation, victim compensation, worker health programs, education restitution funds. Press called it unprecedented. Some called it strategic. Some called it survival. Abimbola did not care what they called it. She cared that people got paid, that boys would no longer be trapped through fake scholarships, that names buried in files now stood in light. And when Tunde came to see her that evening in the hospital garden, no cameras, no entourage, no rehearsed power in his posture, he did not ask for gratitude. He asked only, "Would you walk with me?" Abimbola looked at him for a long moment, then placed her hand in his. Not because he was a CEO, not because he had power, because he had finally learned that love, responsibility, and justice all begin the same way, with a human being choosing not to stand above another, but beside them.